Thoughts on the millions of Germans protesting fascism right now after the AFD party was exposed for plotting to expel 2 million ethnics to Africa? Bro, Germany is such a weird place. I don't know how to describe it. I know I got some German chatters in here. I feel like Germany is completely insane.
Migration and the economy are the top of the list of concerns for Germans. That's according to the latest numbers from the polling institute Infratest DMAP. It shows dwindling support for the governing coalition, while the far-right AFD is gaining ground over its stance on migration.
All the warnings have made little difference. Recent polls show that support for the AFD remains firm. 22% of people are ready to vote for it. It's in second place behind the Conservatives and well ahead of the parties in the current coalition government.
Tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets of the German city of Hamburg to protest against the far right. It follows revelations that members of the Alternative for Germany party held a secret meeting to discuss the mass deportation of immigrants and German citizens of foreign origin.
The streets of Hamburg overflowing with protesters, giving voice to the post-war German promise of never again to right-wing extremism.
I'm actually demonstrating for the first time in my life. I myself find it threatening. I know stories from the Nazi era from my grandfather, and I don't want that to happen again.
Protests erupted after it emerged that Alternative for Germany members and neo-Nazis met to discuss plans to deport millions of people with migrant roots, including German citizens. The party's leadership has tried to distance itself from the so-called master plan.
I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it feels like neoliberal fascism is at the Germany's at the tip of the spear on neoliberal fascism. I feel like they're writing the agenda because, all things considered, Germany has a massive Muslim migrant population. Germany has a massive migrant population after World War II. They needed to, beef up industry, and they brought in Turkish migrant workers. Obviously, Western Germany specifically was not denazified. Like, it was not. It was, as a matter of fact, re-Nazified, specifically by the United States of America and Western powers, because they had a much larger goal at hand, the goal of the eradication of communism, right? A specter is haunting Europe. We must defeat communism. That's the real evil here. And who are the greatest commie killers? Well, the Nazis that we didn't kill. You know, they got a lot of combat experience. And my point is, I think Germany is very strange on that front because, like, one, they have one of the higher Muslim refugee populations in Europe. They have a higher Muslim population than other countries in Europe as far as, like, the Turkish diaspora that lives in Germany. And what I find really, really, really strange about this is that in spite of all of that, they have a growing momentum of obviously the AFD and parties such as that are openly fascist. But Turks are more secular. Muslims, no, not the Turkish Germans. I think German Turks are becoming increasingly more disillusioned and increasingly more segregated on economic boundaries, and it's causing, I feel like, a lot of German Turks to become more and more reactionary, more and more right wing. You know what it is? German Turks, for some weird reason, turn into like the the fundamentalist, like, Muslims in the UK. Not every Muslim is like that, obviously, in the UK, but some of them go so aggro. They're like way more reactionary than like the Muslim populations and their attitudes towards towards Islam in the respective host nations, right? Like their nations of origin. This is something I've criticized quite a bit. I've talked about this quite a bit as far as like German Turks, like Turks in diaspora and how pro-Erdogan they are, for example. It's like really annoying. Something that Turks back home hate, right? They do not like that at all. And I don't know. I just like, I think it stems from like the racism that they experience and the economic hardships that they experience and the class dynamic that exists there that is racialized, of course, just like in America. The class dynamic is racialized heavily between, black and brown populations and the white population. And I feel as though that is part of the reason why people identify with more reactionary attitudes, and they get defensive. They posture defensively. And I'm a firm believer in integration. For all of America's faults and failures, they do a relatively decent job. This country's done a relatively decent job in immigration. It can do significantly more, of course, but there is very real integration in the United States of America, especially by the third generation. Instead of creating economic enclaves that also then feed back into that same cycle of just despising the rest of the population and the rest of the population despising them, because that's where it's born out of usually. I think that it's just becoming a dangerous prospect. Having said that, there are no real options. There are no real leftist options. There are no real actual progressive communist socialist alternatives, especially in a place like Germany. I mean, you've seen the German anti-fascist movement. They were breaking down the doors of a bakery for hosting a talk for Palestinians and dumping pig fat. That's what their anti-fascists are doing. And I just feel I don't want to make jokes, but I do feel the some of these German fascists, anti-fascists have one speed. They don't know how to do anti-fascism. Perhaps that's what happens when you wipe out the partisans and all the Jewish socialists and trade unionists in your country during the Holocaust, and then you don't have a real institutional leftist momentum there, and the dudes that think that they're doing leftist progressive momentum are just being insanely racist. I think they just get mad, and when you don't have any mechanism of pushback as well as with no logic of materialist analysis, all you can do is become reactionary. Yeah. That's a subsect of German Antifas. I'm just saying it's odd when you got anti-fascists who claim that they're anti-fascists, and then what they're doing is dumping pig fat on a bakery that hosted a pro-Palestinian talk. That's the most psychotic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That's you're insanely racist. It's also ironic because pig fat is also not kosher either. It's not it's anything. It doesn't do anything to the Muslims. The idea that pig fat is going to somehow make Muslims perish is insanely stupid and racist. But yeah, it's anti-Deutsche, right? Anti-German's political current. That's the movement. Anti-Deutsch is the generic name applied to a variety of theoretical and political tendencies within the left in mainly Germany and Austria. The anti-Germans form one of the main camps in the broader Antifa movement alongside the anti-Zionist, anti-imperialists. After two currents split between the 1990s and the early 2000s as a result of their diverging views on Israel. The anti-Germans are a fringe movement within the German left. In 2006, Deutsche Welle estimated the number of anti-Germans to be between 500 and 3,000. The basic standpoint of the anti-Germans includes opposition to German nationalism, a critique of mainstream left anti-capitalist views, which are thought to be simplistic and structurally anti-Semitic. Wait, what? They think anti-capitalism is anti-Semitic? Okay, these guys are literally, okay. All right, never mind. That's pretty funny. This is the classic, yeah, that's full circle. That's full circle, baby. No, that's literally anti-Semitic. Saying anti-capitalism is inherently anti-Semitic is an anti-Semitic statement. Why? Because you're automatically saying, oh, you mean bankers? Yeah, that's right. You mean Jews, which is an insane thing to say because it's inherently the exact opposite of what anti-capitalists are saying. I love this, dude. I love these guys. They're awesome. Hey, man, that Geiger counter is coming in handy again. Hold up. Wait a minute. Uh-oh. That Hitler particle's going crazy, dude. Hitler particles detected again. It's pretty funny for Germans to say that anti-capitalism is actually secretly anti-Semitic. Why is that additionally funny? Because, dude, one, it has the underlying premise that all Jews are somehow powerful bankers. That's number one. And number two, no, it was the partisan Jews in the KPD that was resisting the Nazi movement. And then you killed them. Your grandfather literally killed them. What are you saying? It's insane to have your own grandpappy play a role in the execution of communist, socialist, trade unionist, Jews, and non-Jews alike, and then using the same exact arguments that your grandpappy used. But this time, it's like for supposedly in defense of Jewish people. That's cool. Yeah, this was what I was talking about with the pig fat. These guys went in. The German pro-Israeli Antifa attacked a bakery run by leftists with migrant background with pig fat for hosting pro-Palestinian leftist organizations. Someone said to me that first-generation migrants are more docile because they're new and don't want to risk anything, but second-gen see more as troublemakers, not because they come from migrant families, but because they're acting more like the citizens of that country, but it's a problem because they're seen as migrants. It's actually a really interesting take, sure. Germans are unironically invoking their Nazi grandfathers to make that argument. German elites have convinced themselves that they get anti-Semitism in a way that Jews simply can't. They seem to have gained enlightenment through genocide. An example, when Der Spiegel did a bizarre takedown of Greta Thunberg, the only climate activist in the entire world they could find who didn't support Palestine was Luisa Neubauer, a leader of Fridays for Future in Germany. Neubauer was ready to accuse the entire climate movement of anti-Semitism. How does she know? Is she particularly close to Jewish culture? Has she been a scholar of anti-Jewish discrimination? No. The only qualification she referred to is that her great-grandfather from the Reemtsma dynasty was an SS member who donated huge sums to the Nazi party. Inheriting a ton of money from Nazis seemingly offers a unique education in liberal humanist values. I've heard this before, that like Germans think that they have a unique experience with the Holocaust because they did it, right? Or because their grandparents did it. And I didn't realize it was actually something that they openly say. Guys, I know a thing or two about the Holocaust because my great grandparents did it directly, right? Like they supported it. So I know it's like, yeah, but you know in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? Like you don't know in the right direction. Here's a great example. Apartheid South Africa, post-apartheid South Africa, they know what it's like to withstand ethnic cleansing campaigns and exist under an apartheid because that's in the right direction. Those are like the victims, right? Those are the victims that took power. And now they're the ones who are launching this investigation. So having the guys that did the Holocaust partner up with Israel to yell at the guys who withstood their own ethnic cleansing campaign to be like, no, you don't understand. We know how to do the Holocaust real good is not exactly the argument that you want to present. If you argue with them, they love to say, well, you just don't understand how evil Germans are. No, I understand it. Okay. I understood it historically and I understand it now. No, I perfectly understand it. Oh, I understand it. Let me tell you. Like I like Germany, okay? I will reluctantly admit this. As a Turkish person, Berlin, Kreuzberg, many parts of Germany have a massive Turkish diaspora. I visited many times. While I'm not super fond of the boxy architecture in East Germany, I do think that they have great doner. You know, this is like, it just makes me really sad to see how intensely these guys have been like pro-Israel in the most racist ways you can be.
And here in Berlin, thousands of people gathered in solidarity with Israel at the Brandenburg Gate on Sunday. Among them were relatives of hostages taken by Hamas during its terror attacks 2 weeks ago. Meanwhile, several protesters were arrested at a pro-Palestinian march, which authorities had banned for security reasons.
Protecting Jewish life is something Germany's government says it has a special responsibility to do. Figures show incidents of anti-Semitism have risen since the Hamas attacks.
While this demonstration here has gone ahead peacefully, local authorities across Germany have banned many pro-Palestinian demonstrations from taking place at all over fears of incitement to anti-Semitic violence.
Nearby, police clash with protesters at an unauthorised pro-Palestinian demonstration, something seen repeatedly in Berlin in recent days. But the bans have led to fierce criticism, many accusing German authorities of censorship and political repression. Some pro-Palestinian demonstrations have gone ahead without incident.
You said you don't like Germany before, that it's your least favorite place to visit. I think it's boring. I've said that. But overall, I love the food. The doner is really good. And I do feel a sense of closeness due to how large the Turkish diaspora is there. But it is definitely, yeah, I'm not a fan of brutalist architecture. It definitely is not great. It's not, they're not doing a great job this year. dodging the tanky allegations. I hate brutalist architecture. I think it's kind of boring. And I don't like brutalist architecture. I like the utility of it, and I want everyone to have a house, but I don't like brutalist architecture. That's fine. That's fine. Saying a whole country is boring is kind of stupid. Dude, it's always going to be reductive. Don't lean into it too much. It doesn't mean anything all that significant, okay? In 1962, the Socialist German Democratic Republic mapped every West German ambassador with links to the Nazi Party, revealing a stark political continuity and a clear failure to denazify. What we are seeing now is among the many consequences of the West's victory in the Cold War. Yeah. This is 100% true. I've talked about this before. Bez D. Marx has done a phenomenal job. I believe they're a German socialist. They've done a phenomenal job of like talking about how the German government re-Nazified instead of actually denazifying after World War II at the behest of NATO and the United States of America specifically for reasons that I just described to you. It's like part of the reason why they're Swiss. Okay. Is part of the reason why I am not too fond of NATO as well historically. And the thing is, however, there's a lot of spots. There are a lot of spots where people are voting for AFD in East Germany too, because it's always the same principle. It's economic volatility. Since the reunification and the dissolution of the USSR, AFD has grown in power and in momentum. This is true. The point is, it grows in power and momentum because, one, there's no real socialist alternative, both in the East or West. And two, there's a lot of economic instability, especially in the East. The whole world got Nazified when the U.S. decided to not make illegal Nazi propaganda. And when the USSR and NATO kept all the Nazi engineers, it's not even just the Nazi engineers. Like, it's literally not paperclip. It's not. Paperclip is greatly overstated. I like to joke about it as well. But this is, in my opinion, this is significantly more important. NATO openly, deliberately aligning with anti-communists who were Nazis, right? Because they were the best, most effective, like, anti-communists, is a legacy that still very much exists to this day. It was 1,000%. It was 1,000% something you saw in the American State Department as well. We had a lot of people who were kind of fascy in both the CIA and the FBI, American fascies who just hated communism. And we still do, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, historically speaking, people were, like, once communism was presented, once Chad is shocked to find out that the U.S. had former Nazis in their ranks. I've never heard about this. Yeah, but it's not just Operation Paperclip, right? And the USSR did a version of this as well, but not to the same degree as the United States, 100% for the record. But yeah, Gordon Liddy is a prime example, 100%. But my point is it's bigger than just Operation Paperclip. It's more so that, like, ideologically, once we decided that communism was the real villain here, right, and socialism was the real villain because it was a threat to capital, the people that we elevated into positions of power in all of our institutions were fascy as hell because those are the guys who hate communism the most. Also, a lot of Nazis just stayed in power in Germany after World War II due to a lack of evidence because, of course, they hid their crimes. Yeah. Little addendum, the AFD is a deeply neoliberal party, and they don't even deny it in their electoral manifesto. They don't differ too much from their OG post-Reich Nazi party, NPD, but their rhetoric is a lot more bourgeoisie than outright fash. Well, because they can't be outright fascist. That's why they also substitute the Nazi sloganeering for Weimar Germany, right? Like, this is the reason why they use the old German flag, for example. They fly it because they are not allowed. It is illegal for them to be openly fascist, openly Nazi. Yeah, they use the Imperial German flag, I think, right? All of this is just stuff to consider when analyzing why Germany is the way it is and trying to develop a better understanding of why post-World War II a lot of people, took positions that they took and how that is still impactful in our culture to this day. Because you can draw a direct line from post-World War II attitudes in the Western world, the America-led Western world in the aftermath of World War II were defenders of capitalism, global capital, right? And they saw the USSR and its influence as dangerous, very dangerous, a threat to capital, which is understandable because it was a threat to capital. And in that interest, in the continuation of that interest, They went as far as to align with the most rugged anti-communists out there. And those guys were always fascists. And the direct line you can point to between that is the SS Galicia Division Ukrainian veteran who voluntarily joined the Foreign Legion of the Nazis, who ironically considered Ukrainians to be Slav dogs, by the way, just as all of the other Eastern European countries that they invaded and killed a shit ton of people in. How do you get a guy who was a literal Nazi to get a standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament? Well, that guy was a literal Nazi, a part of the SS Division's foreign squadron, but he came to Canada because he was a anti-communist. That's how he was able to operate. Yeah, sure, he was a Nazi, but he was anti-communist, and we hate communism way more than we hate Nazism. Why did I talk about all this? Because fascists in neoliberal America and in the Western world have always made for good bedfellows with the supposed liberals who would never. They hate white supremacy. They hate racism. They hate bigotry of all sorts, but simply just end up aligning with that kind of thing when push comes to shove. I mean, look, you might not agree with a lot of Stalin's opinions, behaviors, but if there is a prescient take from him, it is the notion that if you cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds. It's just historically how that has worked. And he was right on that front, because what is fascism but capitalism in decay? Capitalism in crisis brings about fascism because fascism is seen as a way to at least restore order by force when capitalism is in crisis.